Clan Smoke Jaguar. The origins of this mighty clan are steeped in glorious intentions and ideals as the greatest warriors anyone has ever seen. Yet, we all know what happens, why it happens, how it happens. But we are not looking at that today. Today, we will be looking at the genesis of Clan Smoke Jaguar, and how they began as formal special forces in the Star League, honed themselves to a razor-sharp edge, and how the corruption of Nicholas Kerensky and the cons that followed Franklin Ozis twisted one of the mightiest clans to ever exist into a scourge upon mankind unseen since the immerse coup. For a long time, Clan Smoke Jaguar have been painted as staunch villains, twirling their mustaches, kicking puppies, and stealing candy from children, all while committing war crimes over their morning coffee. Assuming that, though, is unbearably naive and short-sighted. Just like everyone else in this universe, there is nuance, history, and causality that made the Jaguars into what they became, and then evolved in the modern era of the Ill Clan. But that is a story for later. The reborn Jaguars can wait. For now, this is the story of Clan Smoke Jaguar. Like the others, Clan Smoke Jaguar was one of the 20 original clans created by Nicholas Kerensky, son of the legendary Alexander Kerensky, founded in 2807, just before Operation Klondike would be carried out on the Pentagon worlds to end the Exodus Civil War. Yet, the origins go back a little further than that fateful conversation between Nicholas Kerensky and a man named Franklin Ozis. Clan Smoke Jaguar, like the other clans, also started within the Star League Defense Force. Franklin Ozis, born in 2778 within the realm of the Federated Suns ruled by House Davion, would go on to join the Star League Defense Force following after his parents, Simus and Lena Ozis, who were both decorated tank commanders in the SLDF Special Forces Division, furthering their devotion by being fanatics of General Alexander Kerensky. When Operation Exodus was shared with them, the Ozis family were one of the first to jump on board and depart the Inner Sphere for a better future. Originally settling on the Pentagon world of Eden, Franklin's parents would test out a military service and be relegated to farmers, a fate that was welcomed as the Ozis family had since grown tired of war and conflict since their participation in the fight against Immerse the Usurper. Most other SLDF personnel struggled with adapting to the life of a civilian, but the Ozis took to it rather naturally for reasons stated just prior. However, trouble was never too far away, as Eden was settled primarily by Fed Sons and Capellan expats, two nations with long and bitter history between them that always ended in direct conflict. Even out here in the Pentagon worlds, that would be no different. As tensions between the two groups rose, the minds of youth would follow suit as gangs tied to nationality formed and began to cause chaos to each other, even to people who would prefer to be left out of it. Franklin and his younger brother Simon would come to join the Fed Sons aligned gang, though Franklin did it out of an effort to remain unbothered by both sides, highlighting the nationalistic and violent actions as highly distasteful in his eyes. The Fed Sons gang would burn down a factory that was run by Capellan expats, but were caught doing so. This resulted in the death of the witness, who was a very young boy, by being beaten to death. When authorities caught up, the gang, including Franklin and Simon, were arrested and sentenced to 1-year labor on Circe. Hoping the sentence would be a nice reprieve from conflict, the news of the De Chevalier massacre broke out and destroyed whatever faith Franklin had left about the Star League, the Pentagon worlds, and humanity as a whole, thinking that humans will never escape conflict and death. Alexander Kerensky's wife passed away in 2796, leaving the widower distraught for some time and removed himself from any duties that could have prevented the coming events. With Alexander's semi-absence, tensions in the Pentagon worlds reached a breaking point as, by this time, nationalities from the great houses had returned in full, leading to full-scale revolts going as far as dissidents raiding Brian caches to stay on top. Alexander would be shaken out of his stupor and made the action to send forces to end the conflict by any means necessary. Led by General Aaron de Chevalier and Major Elizabeth Hazen, SLDF forces arrived on Eden to end the uprising. The Liao-aligned dissidents had the upper hand, downing yet not killing Hazen, but successfully ambushing and killing de Chevalier. In a rage born out of loyalty and love, Hazen would systematically slaughter any rebels regardless of allegiance, choosing to use her katana first before any other weapon or method. No one realized it at the moment, but this was the birth of the first Jade Falcon. In Franklin Oz's eyes, he felt betrayed, having idolized a man for being the paragon of peace that fell to violence as easily as the lowest of the low of society, destroying whatever semblance of faith in humanity he had left. Franklin now believed that society as it was failed, and will continue to fail unless built from the ground up, forsaking everything to start from scratch. Entire villages were razed to the ground. The population of Eden reduced permanently, and what is worse, is the massacre did the exact opposite of what it was intended to do. It sparked a war instead of stopping it. The Exodus Civil War began that day. As the Civil War kicked off, Alexander would have a heart attack and pass away at the age of 100. As faith and support in the Star League and Exile evaporated after these events, Nicholas Kerensky stepped up to do what no one else was willing to do: leave. Again. Except one key difference was presented. This time, the Exodus would not be to preserve the Inner Sphere and the Star League, but to preserve humanity by any means. While that was the public message and truth, it would come later that Nicholas's version of that story was far different than the one you or I assumed based off that sentiment. The Ozizes and Franklin particularly looked on Alexander with great disdain for falling, but saw Nicholas still held the same fire, ambition, and drive to action as Alexander once had. As such, they remained loyal to the Kerensky family, sold by the promise of restarting from scratch just like Franklin wanted. Settled now on Strana Mechti following the Second Exodus, Franklin turned to the life of peace he had been seeking, taking up some studies in biology and spending time in the jungles studying plants and animals. It would be here that Franklin developed a fascination with a particularly imported and genetically modified Terran feline, altered to thrive in this new ecosystem of Strana Mechti. A spotted coat as dark as an ash-filled sky, eyes as blue as the azure-colored oceans, and muscles that would put future elementals to shame, this animal was called a Smoke Jaguar. He would be gravely unaware at the time this animal would change his life irrevocably. In the spring of 2809, while on an excursion with his younger brother Simon, they would come across a pride of Smoke Jaguars, only to be ambushed by the leader of the pack, a massive one that would kill Simon. Happening so fast, Franklin did not have time to draw a weapon, and the sheer brutality of the attack further stunned Franklin into inaction. Only when his brother's screams stopped did Franklin retaliate. With a lust for vengeance, Franklin drew the small hunting knife he had with him and proceeded to attack this massive beast, butchering it worse than it did to his brother. When it was done, Franklin realized he did not feel peace, at least what he thought was peace, and decided he never wanted to ever again. In this moment, the revelation that the one time he chose violence, he felt triumph, victory. Even in the moment of mourning his dead brother, he brought peace to himself for this wronging. Before now, every time he chose peace, violence would always bite back harder. This time, and for all time, he would choose violence to achieve peace and triumph. The first Smoke Jaguar was created, and this brutal nature would be the core to the future people Franklin would lead. Meanwhile, Nicholas Kerensky would have a solidified concept into what would become the clans, a brand new society built from the ground up, driven by martial skill and talent over what great house you were born into. Such clanisms that would develop to what we are all familiar with would come in short order, such as the clans speaking Star League English, choosing to cull the use of contractions to honor the formal nature of the Star League and to reduce miscommunications in conversation and especially combat. The rituals and traditions for each clan would also be in reverence to this new culture, to slowly integrate the ideas of this new society through repetition and enforcing these upon people. This would create the religious-like fervor within the clans of undying loyalty and guardianship over their culture as sacred. An important staple to clan society, particularly in the warrior caste, was Zelbriggen, the clan code of honor in combat. I will come back to this shortly. While Nicholas would more or less create the 20 clans after a totem animal found on Stranomecti, the one case where this is not true is with Clan Blood Spirit, as Nicholas went on record to state that the clan would embody the literal spirit of the clans, the ones to uphold the society as Nicholas intended in all ways. Though each clan has as unique origins as any other, from the Ghost Bear's sense of family, to the Star Adder's love of auroras and appreciation of the beauty of space, all the way down to the vicious killing of a brother by a large predatory feline. For how Nicholas made one clan in particular was a masterclass in timing and manipulation. Nicholas would have a one-on-one talk with Franklin Ozis at one point, starting off with sharing his condolences with Franklin. Nicholas would then go on to compliment Franklin's brutal methods and responses, strongly suggesting he try for a position within his new society as a warrior. Franklin, being more susceptible than others from trauma, and talking with a far better idol than he saw in Alexander, was on board immediately. Franklin would test in this new society, achieving the position of a Mechwarrior, and placed into a group of people that had direct history in other special forces branches of the Star League by Nicholas himself that were all just like Franklin, a fledgling Clan Smoke Jaguar. During preparations and training for Operation Klondike, which was to be the return to the Pentagon worlds and end the Exodus Civil War, Franklin quickly became popular, showing great leadership skills, ability to command, and the charisma to earn the loyalty and admiration of those around him. This effect worked both ways, as the people would adopt Franklin's brutality in combat, focusing on honing the individual rather than the many, developing what the person was good at rather than working on their weaknesses. This would be both good and bad, as would be demonstrated soon and in the centuries to follow. Popular enough to be voted in unanimously as the first Khan of Clan Smoke Jaguar, Franklin would lead his clan against the dissidents on Eden alongside close friend and Saw Khan of the clan, Liam Ismail. Together, the two Khans would push their warriors to their limits, producing some of the best trained warriors in the newborn clans. Signs of the core brutality and ruthlessness would be instilled into Clan Smoke Jaguar in the following conflict that was Operation Klondike. Following the lead the Khans had, Clan Smoke Jaguar debuted themselves as highly efficient and lethal warriors, putting down any sign of resistance with total annihilation. Justified or not, one particular case that would cement the scorched earth policy the Jaguars would use well into the future, as actually false rumors of Jaguar brutality would lead to the Troubles pacifying a city, causing the deaths of many Jaguar officers outside of honorable combat. Bombing and shelling the city into rubble would be Oz's response, and after Ilkhan Nicholas Kerensky had no comments or concerns with such an action, Oz's and the Jaguars deemed it an acceptable action to continue using. This lethal efficiency had Clan Smoke Jaguar taking objectives and completing missions far faster than any other clan. So much so, the Ilkhan was forced to look into whatever was happening. When asked, Franklin Ozis said, "They should have surrendered after the first object lesson." Publicly, Kerensky never said a thing towards how the Jaguars conducted themselves, but privately was scathing about them, believing they were going against everything Nicholas himself set up for this new society. However, the pragmatist that he is knew the Jaguars were an exceptionally skilled force, a living weapon to wield, and with a tighter leash could be directed back in line. This would indeed prove highly effective at the end of Operation Klondike and the years beyond. As an important note about the final battle of Operation Klondike, two things occurred that would drive forward the clans' way of life as a whole. The first was Ozus recommending to completely destroy the capital city of Eden, which the Ilkhan rejected. The second event was the Jaguars somewhat ignoring this sometime after the battle began and made their way into the city. Encountering dishonorable guerrilla tactics from the dissidents, the Jaguars began leveling city blocks in response. A furious Ilkhan would confront Franklin Ozus as to why, and the reply would be that since their combatants were ignoring the clan's rules of warfare, the Jaguars too should be released from it as a result. This would be the origin of a particular amendment to Clan Zelbriggan in the near future. The Exodus Civil War was over, and the clans inducted the Pentagon Worlds into their territory. The Jaguars would go on to claim a vast majority of Brian caches on Eden through trials of possession against other clans. To stay on top, Ozus increased the intensity of the training of Jaguar Sibcos, further pushing the skills of his warriors beyond all known limits. By the start of the Golden Century, Clan Smoke Jaguar had the best warriors in clan space, as well as a military force or tomen to win out over any other clan. Ozuz's warmongering and savagery would be observed to be contained solely in combat, as Franklin made a point to empower the other Jaguar civilians and castes, speaking to their critical importance to supporting the clan as a whole, growing strong connections between the ruling warriors and the subservient peoples of his clan. During this downtime, the Jaguars claimed the Huntress system for their own, a rarity for a single clan to claim an entire system. Huntress itself was both a tropical paradise and a sandblasted wasteland, though most of the population founded and settled in the city of Lutera on the tropical continent of Jaguar Prime, deep within the rainforests and jungles. While the Jaguars were riding high in the clans, they were not immortal, as a trial of possession for Sandra Sang's genetic legacy from Clan Ghostbear saw the Bears defeat the Jaguars. In combat, the Jaguars were terrifying, but used very simple aggressive tactics and were outplayed by the Bears' more patient and methodical approach to battles. Another result of this trial was Ozuz's awareness that even the clans needed peacetime to recover from simple trials and grow as a people, culture, and society. The years ahead for the Jaguars would see this demi-renaissance between growing their military power, training ever-increasingly better warriors, working with the other supporting castes, and conducting themselves with a paladin-like stance out of combat. The Jaguars were brutal, yes, but in this age of the clan, they were rigidly adhering to the clan ways as they saw them. The Jaguars would remain this way for a time, but when Franklin Ozus eventually passed, the Jaguars he made would grow out of the mold he designed, and finally, when Nicholas Kerensky was killed, did the Jaguars' leash break completely. Ozuz's legacy on his clan would essentially ignore the side that showed restraint and kindness to Jaguar citizens, opting for a Spartan and cutthroat society that slowly corrupted itself over decades. Foregoing this mutual support of the castes would lead the Jaguars having to rely solely on winning trials of possession for resources and supplies. The cons of Smoke Jaguar that followed Franklin Ozus would be the reasons why the Jaguars would become what we know. As restrictions and overheads were removed, the new generation of Jaguar cons overglorified combat and warfare, further instilling a culture that encouraged bloodthirst, violence, and slowly eradicating any form of levity or neutral social conduct they had when Franklin was Khan. Despite the downslide in their culture, their Tomen only got more and more ruthless, winning important trials and battles that would give them Brian caches, genetic legacies, omni-mech technology, battle armor designs, and even territory within the clan homeworlds. Interestingly, this time in history did not see the Jaguars as the most aggressive or brutal clan, as that status was very much in the hands, or I guess paws, of Clan Mongoose. Mongoose, who exemplified the logic of a high school bully, puffing out their chests and despising any sign of weakness of themselves or others, always put forward an image of perfection, something that could never be defeated. So aggressive they were that no clan was safe from attacks. So frequent and annoying, the other clans collectively referred to them as weasels. In 2868, Clan Mongoose launched a surprise attack on the Jaguar world of Atreus. At the same time, Clan Staradder launched their surprise attack against Clan Mongoose. Making a political plea to the Grand Council to stop any counteroffensive from the Jaguars, the Mongoose Khan would waste air as Khan Theodore Ozis would bid and win the right to absorb the annoying Mongoose clan. In such brutal swiftness, Clan Smoke Jaguar would almost flawlessly win everything that belonged to Clan Mongoose. Curiously, the Jaguars would not use the captured genetic legacies, though Clan Cloud Cobra would trial for these, win quite a few of them, and proceed to use them, which greatly bothered the Jaguars. By now, the Jaguars were one of the top 3 strongest clans next to Wolf and Ghost Bear, but only by martial strength. In reality, the Jaguars were already suffering as their society bit by bit would collapse into total control by the warrior caste. Until now, freeborn peoples were looked down upon, but beyond silent contempt, nothing had ever really happened. But the drive for trueborn supremacy, the constant push to hone their combative abilities, cause destruction to their enemies, and subdue all foes by sheer force would change the lives of civilians too. A revolt on the Jaguar world of Londerholm would be the penultimate shift for Clan Smoke Jaguar, as silent rebellions by the lesser castes forced Khan Ian Moon to put an end to this annoyance with violence. The resulting massacre would lead to all civilian power in the clan taken away, and the treatment of freeborns would reach a new low even compared to all the other clans, as prejudice against them would be indistinguishable from racism. This feedback loop would continuously grow contempt and hatred for each other despite being in the same clan. In the waning years of the Golden Century, the Jaguars had regressed enough to be nearly completely dependent on trialing other clans for resources and supplies, though no other clan truly knew how far behind the Jaguars had fallen. In truth, the only thing they had going for them by the end of the century was the best Tomen in the homeworlds, though even that power was quickly being overcome, as technological progress in all the other clans was making up that difference. A contributing factor that hit the Jaguars harder than most other clans was the restlessness of peacetime to the bloodthirsty warriors, as the politics of the clans came front and center. Many clans would speak up about being this antsy, and others would counter it by saying this is how things should be. Either way, most warriors in the clans grew restless as very few opportunities to gain honor and glory in combat ever arose. The political century began here, as the Hidden Hope doctrine by Alexander Kerensky came back into the spotlight, the promised glorious return to the Inner Sphere and install a new Star League. Given the already clear divides in conduct between all the clans since the days of founder Nicholas Kerensky, the clans of today are far different from the clans of then. Political century or not, the line was already drawn in the sand. One side saw the Hidden Hope doctrine as a galactic reset, starting from scratch and preventing all conflict with the new Star League. The other side saw the Inner Sphere as something to watch, guard, and serve when the people were ready. This is the origin of Crusaders and Wardens. While Clan Jade Falcon would be credited with being the creator and the first of the Crusader clans, Clan Smoke Jaguar would adhere to that ideology like divine law. In the future, their devotion to the Crusader ideology was so strong that it even drew concerns from all other Crusaders, even some within Smoke Jaguar itself. Clan Smoke Jaguar would be the first to speak to their desire to begin this crusade, saying the clans have successfully removed any trace of inner spherisms their people originally arrived with, and the time to return promised by Alexander and Nicholas Kerensky had come at last. The divide that was caused by this claim would forever separate the clans into two sides. Clan Wolf would be the first to rebuke this desire, leading the Warden cause. Jumping on board with eagerness was Clan Jade Falcon, agreeing with the Jaguars that the time had come. As each clan more or less declared their allegiance to one of the two interpretations of the Hidden Hope doctrine, fate was sealed that day regardless of the outcome. The clans would return to the Inner Sphere. The Crusaders will invade. The question was when. The first appeasement to the Crusaders was the allowance of a scouting mission to occur within the Inner Sphere. The main big clans would send true and freeborn agents into the Inner Sphere and report back with their findings. This group would be known as Intelser, a famously failed operation as almost all agents vanished and integrated into spheroid nations in secret to get away from the clans, or simply never reported back for any number of reasons. A particular member of this group that decided to integrate and get away was Nikolai Mason, who would go on to completely divorce himself from the clans, settle in the Inner Sphere and start a mercenary company based out of Federated Sun space. After a surprise attack by Comstar-hired mercenaries, Black Inferno, in which Nikolai was killed in action, command of the company would pass to his son, who would exact vengeance on Black Inferno and Comstar, while finding out more about his father's lineage, which Nikolai kept secret. Clan Wolf for the longest time would be able to hold the line against the Crusaders, but towards the end of the 2900s, even some declared Wardens were slowly changing into Crusaders, until Clan Wolf practically stood alone. The small handful of remaining Warden clans were not big enough nor powerful enough to oppose the Crusaders, and Clan Wolf saw the writing on the wall. They were, however, able to delay the Crusaders one last time. The Dragoon Compromise would be the last successful appeasement to the Crusaders. Khan Kurlan Ward of Clan Wolf agreed to send freeborn warriors into the Inner Sphere under the guise of a mercenary company. The choice of freeborn warriors irked the Jaguars so much as, in their eyes, only trueborn warriors have the right and honor of performing this mission, let alone should be the first into the Inner Sphere. This drove such a wedge between the pragmatic wolves and the staunch Jaguars that the rivalry between the two clans bloomed into open hatred. This mercenary company would be outfitted with equal technology and numbers that was assumed the Inner Sphere would be using and slip right in undetected. Taking leadership of this recon operation was Jamie Wolf and Natasha Kerensky, though the latter was an inclusion the Crusaders tried to stop as the name Kerensky was as revered by the Inner Sphere as it was in the clans and it might tip their hand. They would be partially correct. Regardless, with their assets, the Wolf's Dragoons, as they called themselves, would depart clan space in 3004 in relative secrecy and arrive in the Inner Sphere in 3005. Though they expected to fit right in, they stood out like a sore thumb, as the Inner Sphere had regressed more than anyone in the clans anticipated. The Dragoons arrived with technology and mechs not seen since the fall of the Star League, and drew a lot of unwanted attention when Natasha Kerensky had to use her name to register as a mercenary. Despite this, the Wolf's Dragoons managed to keep their origins under wraps, though some people correctly suspected who they were, though only got as close as survivors from the Exodus. The Dragoons would carry out the mission that was asked of them, working for each great house, learning about them, their military, state of readiness, all of it. But Khan Kurlan Ward of Clan Wolf implemented a spiritual dead man switch within the Dragoons. In private, the Dragoons swore to absolute secrecy, and that they were to take no orders from the clans except Kurlan Ward himself. Meeting in the deep periphery one last time for supplies and exchanging information, Ward made them swear the oath, and told them that as of now, the Dragoons are to cut off all contact with the clan homeworlds and secretly prepare the Inner Sphere for the inevitable arrival of the clans. One last flashback to the year 3004. This was the year the future leader of the clan invasion, Clan Smoke Jaguar, would be distilled from his iron womb. Leo was a rising star, or rise star, within his clan, a prodigy in the common tongue, showing exceptional skill and ability not only as a Mechwarrior but a leader as well. Despite his arrogant and violent nature, his leadership was as charismatic as a dictator, rallying the strongest Crusader mindset the clan would ever see. By 3029, Leo had earned the blood name of Showers, and shortly after was elected Khan of Clan Smoke Jaguar. The battlefield Smoke Jaguar was now focused on was the political one in the Grand Council. Clan Wolf could no longer block the Crusaders' efforts. As clan factories began churning out new weapons, equipment, battle armor, and omnimechs to prepare for this return, trials of possession for new designs to use against the Inner Sphere were constant. Famously, Clan Wolf lost a trial of possession to the designs and production of the direwolf Omnimech to Clan Smoke Jaguar. More so, his warden support in the Grand Council nearly evaporated, and even Master Politician, Khan Ulrich Kerensky of Clan Wolf, could no longer do anything, especially after an event yet to happen. For the next 2 decades, Leo and Ulrich would be butting heads multiple times every day, but slowly and surely, Leo was able to cultivate majority Crusader support in the Grand Council, and all it would take is one spark to set off this fire waiting to happen. No one would know or predict it at the time, the Leo showers would be handed not just a spark, but a whole bomb that would secure the call to invade. In the Huntress system, it would be a day like any other, as space traffic was normal. Then, a jump signature was detected that was not anticipated. Bearing no identifying features that would make this vessel belonging to any clan, it was swiftly moved in on and captured successfully. After interrogation and scrubbing all the data on board the vessel, they would find the vessel to be called Outbound Light, and was owned by an entity known as the Comstar Explorer Corps. This revelation would turn the Jaguars pale, as the unthinkable possibility of being followed, let alone found, by the Inner Sphere had just happened. One result of this was the Jaguars fortifying the Huntress system, though the defenses were still light as the chances of yet another wanderer from the Inner Sphere happening upon their homeworld was deemed impossible. The last and most obvious result would be to use the stark reality of the Inner Sphere finding the clans as a scare tactic. Leo Showers would enter the Grand Council chambers of the clans. When he left, he was the Ilkhan of the clans and began planning for the great return to the Inner Sphere. On all Jaguar worlds, new Sibcos would be tested into service using the most brutal methods ever seen, as the clan intended to carve through the Inner Sphere like a laser through primitive armor. Their long-awaited chance had come at last, and they would not return without putting forward the best warriors mankind had ever seen. Clan Smoke Jaguar looked on to the Inner Sphere, eager to put the whole of it to the sword, and rebirth a new Star League and lead humanity to a new and final golden age. Hey all, thanks for sticking around and watching. I wanted to put this one together as someone who is allegiant to Clan Smoke Jaguar. A ton of people only know the one-dimensional war crime clan. With Mechwarrior 5 clans close to release, I figured this was the perfect time to talk about the clan that I call home. While nowadays I align myself with the reborn Warden Jaguars in the Ill Clan era, Mech 5 is taking place in the Clan Invasion era, and I still see some silver linings within the old Jaguars. As I was writing, I had a couple chuckles because how the Jaguars came about is very, very similar to how the Decepticons and Megatron got their start in the original Transformers continuity. Sure, they are extreme, no denying that, but there is a reason why they are extreme. I'm not going to turn this into a lesson about trauma and mental health, but if you haven't thought of this until now, I would ask that you imagine the family member you love most being killed right in front of you. That would mess anyone up. With us humans existing in the 21st century, it's difficult for us sitting down in front of a screen or listening to this, doing whatever you're doing in the safety and comfort of modern society. It's hard to imagine what kind of pain and mental trauma an event like that can inflict on you. To believe in peace so much only for violence to drag you back in. And when you do fall to violence, as it were, peace is the result when all is done. Modern day logic and morality don't connect very often with Battletech's logic and morality, but this one is probably one of the most human experiences and such a raw and dark showing that I don't think anyone could come away from an experience like that unaffected. All right, enough of the soapbox. What I was getting at was I wanted to tell the true story of Clan Smoke Jaguar. Get people ready for what they'll experience in the clan, all the good, all the bad, and understanding the reasons as to why for everything to happen as it does. We'll see some bad stuff in this game, we know this. But it is tiring to hear the same old, yeah, but it's Smoke Jaguar, without understanding why. Hopefully this clears the air. If not, I hope it gets everyone excited to dive into the game. With that, I return to the real world and prepare myself for launch day of Mechwarrior 5 Clans. I'll be seeing you all in the invasion corridor. Take care.